Oh, wait. Okay. Let's see. Let's help you. Do you see the flower now? Sorry.
The flower? Oh, no. Well, I'm like, what flower? Because I'm moving this. Um, I mean, I see everything this way, but like I can see both of my cameras. I was just trying to get it so that I couldn't see both of my cameras if I was pinning something.
I was
Ooh.
in a practice webinar, so I'm like, yeah, the real deal now. So
Oh, we're in the real deal.
yeah.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching me organize my camera. Um, just bear with me while we're getting everyone dizzy here. Hello, Bill from So we're starting a few minutes early while I get everything set up here. All right, bear with me for a moment. I'm gonna actually I'll leave this camera on and get everything lined up while we're here. Great. I'm really excited to cook this today, and I've been grating cheese for the last 10 minutes, so really quite hungry here. Thanks for being early, everyone. Just gonna do one more thing before we actually get started. I guess while we're here, for those of you who are a little early, I haven't yet had a chance to take my spot prawns off the shells, so we can de-shell some spot prawns together here. um, how many of you have had spot prawns? If you want to let me know in the chat, if this is something that you've had before. I feel like a lot of you have at this point because we've had these as a member special pretty often over like the last few months or so. Yes, they are truly wonderful. So while we are waiting for everyone else to arrive, I'm gonna go ahead and de-shell some of these so we can get them into the mac and cheese that we're making today. And just as a little bonus, if you're here early, if you've never taken the shells off spot prawns before, I have really tiny ones for some reason this time. Sometimes they're really big, sometimes they're really small. Small is fine today because we're just going to be making them into mac and cheese, so I'm chopping them up anyway. But what I like to do, I like to take my kitchen shears. If you don't have kitchen shears, you should definitely consider buying some. And then I just snip them down the backs like that. And then it's usually really easy to go ahead and roll them out of the shell. So hopefully this won't take me too long because I was supposed to do this before this started, but here we are. So if you've never taken the shells off spot prawns before, these make a really nice stock. So I'm sure many of you have heard me say that before, but don't throw those shells away. They are super delicious and worth putting into something where you can flavor like a risotto or even just like a chowder or something like that. So nothing goes to waste until every drop of flavor is gone. So we still have a couple more minutes, which is great because I think I can get these shelled by then. Yes, thank you for letting me where you're tuning in from in the chat. I always like knowing where everyone's tuning in from for these events. I'm in Brooklyn, New York, so it's nice and chilly here. This is the perfect dish to be making today. Ooh, you did make the jam sauce for sockeye. Very nice, Ed. Did you use frozen or fresh blueberries for that? That's a really good combination. Can't see my table. Oh, that's no good. Well, there's nothing really to look at right now. Do you see two screens, me and an empty pot? If that's what we're looking at here, everyone. There's nothing to see here other than me putting some prawns in a bowl, so there's no view of that. Oh, you just see one. Interesting, interesting. Let me see. If you want to, let me pin this video. do not see the pot, that is good to know, because we will want to see the pot later. How about, can you see just one video of me right now? And Carl, if you want to unpin any videos, that might help, just because I'm not sure which videos are showing up at the moment. And thank you for your help, everyone, with technical difficulties. So let me switch. Oh, great, you see both. That's good. If the pot's like a little screen up in the window, that is what we're looking at. Okay, got the pot. Awesome, Diane. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. I am Kat. I'm part of the Wild Alaskan Company recipe team. And today we are going to be cooking a spot prawn mac and cheese. It's a really delicious, baked, savory dish that is perfect for the season. I'm coming live from New York, from Brooklyn, so it's really nice and chilly here. It's a little bit gray outside, so this is like the perfect kind of dish to be having on a day like this when you want something a little bit comforting and a little bit, you know, indulgent and cozy. So I also have lots of neighbors to share this with. So this is a really good season for sharing. I mean, any season is good season for sharing, but this one especially. So before we get to the recipes, and while I'm taking the shells off the spot prawns here, just some housekeeping. If you want to follow along with captions, I invite you to do that at the bottom of your screen. If you're on Zoom, there should be a button that says captions or 3 dots that says more, and then you can get you to the button that says captions. So from there, you can access that and follow along that way. If at any point you have questions during the event, I'll just ask you to drop those into the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to chat on the sidebar as well. It'll just help us find your questions more easily if they're in the Q&A section, in case the chat gets a little rowdy. So, which I don't imagine. You all seem like very calm, gentle people today. So, and lastly, if you do need to leave before today's event is over, don't worry, we'll send a link in the next day. The event will also be available immediately afterward on Facebook on our homepage. And that's where we're live streaming right now. So if you're watching there, hello, as well. So that'll be available to you at the link in the chat, just our Facebook homepage, Wild Alaskan, facebook.com/Wild Alaskan Company. So I'm joined today by a few, actually, yeah, I think 2 of my teammates from the member experience team are here if they want to come on the camera to say hi. Hello, Carl and Matt. You can probably see their little faces at the top of the screen there waving. So thank you for being here. They'll be here to help answer any questions that you have today. Reach out anytime you have a question, and especially, you know, in December and over the new year, if you're traveling, they're the folks that are going to help you reschedule your box. Or, you know, if you're thinking about buying a seafood gift, I'm sure if you've reached out to one of them, they've told you about that. So a seafood gift box is a really fun present for the season. One of my neighbors gave one to her mother-in-law and says she is the new favorite girl in the family for the time being anyway. So so that's always nice to hear. So in any case, what we are making today is spot prawn mac and cheese. We're doing a baked dish. So this is a really great dish to make for a holiday meal, you know, whether that's dinner time or lunchtime if you do holiday dinners early. It's good to bring to a potluck because it feeds a considerable amount of people, although it's so delicious you might be surprised at how quickly this goes. Also, though, if you're not going anywhere, it's a great thing to keep in the refrigerator, you know, just stashing it there so you have something really delicious to eat for the next few days or the next few meals, possibly for every meal until it's gone, because it's that good. It's pasta and spot prawns tossed in like a homemade cheese sauce, and then it's baked with some breadcrumbs on top for like a really crispy textural finish. So really, really delicious, way better than anything that you're going to get in a box. As nostalgic as those things are, this was gonna make you forget all about your nostalgia. So I will say that without the spot prawns, this mac and cheese is really, really delicious on its own. I have absolutely no complaints about it without seafood. But with the spot prawns, it's incredible. It's almost like having like a lobster mac and cheese, if you've ever seen that on a menu and ordered that at a restaurant. So I've heard spot prawns referred to as the lobster of Alaska. So comparing this dish to lobster mac and cheese makes sense. It definitely tracks for that. So it just feels right. So I was talking a little bit about spot prawns before we got started. Many of you probably had them before. They're currently a member special that we're running for a limited time. You can add them to your next box at the link in the chat. Carl's just dropping a link in the chat for that right now. They're also an offering that's featured in a few of our gift boxes, as well as there's a lot of different boxes, everyone. There's also limited time boxes that are not gifts, things that you can send to yourself instead of your regularly scheduled box. I believe one of them has spot prawns in them right now. And you can find all that stuff on your homepage. But yeah, if you've just been shopping around for seafood as a present, like chances are you're giving these to someone. For those of you who haven't had spot prawns before, like I said, they're very lobstery in the sense that they've got a really nice, robust chew to them, not rubbery. What I mean is like a really nice, like hearty chew. They have a really clean flavor, naturally sweet, a little bit buttery, like just on their own. And one thing that I think we don't consider is whether or not the shrimp that we're eating has additives. So this has absolutely no additives. A lot of times the shrimp that you buy at like a conventional grocery store, they're treated with sodium tripolyphosphate. It's a chemical that gives a plumper appearance to shellfish, so spot prawns, or not spot prawns, shrimp, scallops. A lot of the stuff that you can buy in the grocery store is treated with that so that it looks plumper, shinier. It also adds water weight to the shellfish, so you're actually paying for some of that water weight. This particular chemical can leave a really rubbery texture behind in the shrimp. So like no matter how you cook it, it's going to be chewy in not a good way. So if you've ever had rubbery shrimp, then chances are you can blame sodium tripolyphosphate as the culprit. These spot prawns have absolutely nothing added to them. They're just pulled up in pots from the seafloor and then frozen right on the boat. So they stay super fresh until they get to you, and they're just really delicious on their own. No need to add chemicals to them because they don't need them for any reason. So now that I have these peeled, I meant to do that right before the meeting, but didn't get a chance to. If you missed it, I was using kitchen shears to snip them down the backs. It just makes it a little bit easier to peel, in my opinion, especially if you have small ones like I got today. I have some big ones in the freezer. I'll just show you maybe like the size difference. Just remember that these are wild spot prawns. I had them in here. Oh, yeah. These are wild spot prawns, so you're going to have variation in size. We try to pack the bags so that there's big ones together and small ones together, so you don't have different sizes all over the place. But I have another pack in here that I decided not to use today because I'm going to save these to make some like cocktail shrimp out of. Let me cut this a little more. These bags are resealable, but for some reason I can never find where I'm actually supposed to open them. So the prawns I had today, if you saw before I took off the shell, looked pretty small. Something like this. This other batch I have, they're like massive. So I think that these are going to be really good for just eating whole or leaving whole, whereas these will be totally fine to cut up. Like these would be good in a curry. They're perfectly spoon sized, even if you don't cut them up. So anyway, these are going to be for another day. But today I've got maybe 20 little prawnies in here, and they're going to be what goes into the mac and cheese. So let's get to the ingredients here. Let me go ahead and switch some cameras. I'll say that I have my oven preheated right now. It's at 450. It's a pretty hot oven, and I want it to be that hot so that I have a nice toasty oven to cook this stuff in. So Carl, if you want to cut and paste the ingredient list into the chat, I don't know if you've done that already, just to give people an idea of what is going to go into this mac and cheese. So what we're going to start with, actually, well, let me show you. I've got some milk, a couple cups of that, some heavy cream. Everything's already measured out here just so it's easier for me to do. I have some cheese that I grated on a box grater, but you can always buy cheese that's already been grated for you. This is sort of a mix of like Gruyere style cheeses. Gruyere is like a nice nutty Alpine cheese. So it's got some like melty qualities, but also really nice flavor. Just some flour as well is going to go into the sauce to thicken it. And other than that, that's pretty much the ingredient list. I also have a big bowl of pasta that I have already cooked. So what you can use to make this mac and cheese is something like these shells or a classic elbow macaroni, totally up to you. I am a sucker for shells, so that's why I'm using these today. So to get started, what you would want to do is start cooking the pasta just to get it going. But since I've done that, the next thing we're going to do is cook up some butter. And there's going to be a lot of butter in this. We're going to do half a stick of butter to start into this pot over medium heat, just to melt it up with some garlic and get like a really nice base of flavors going. So we'll get this melted in here. And just, you know, this probably goes without saying, but this is not a light dish. When I made this for Thanksgiving, my family and I did a small sort of unconventional seafood Thanksgiving. This was one of the dishes that I made, and it worked out to be about 6 servings. So, you know, in total for this recipe, we're using 8 tablespoons of butter, but you know, between 6 people, that's less than 2 tablespoons of butter a person. That doesn't sound as bad, right? But there's also heavy cream in here, plenty of cheese, and then whole milk. So, you know, even if you're not someone who's watching what they're eating, this is definitely what I would consider a special occasion dish. But, you know, that's the nature of mac and cheese. Like I said, I probably don't even need to preface this with anything, but just in case you were wondering, this is how I feel about it. Special occasions only. So let me get this melted up. In the meantime, I can probably go ahead and chop some parsley. So parsley, we're just gonna throw in here. Actually, let me put some garlic in here first. I've got a ton of garlic because we're making a big baking dish of this. So this is a couple tablespoons of minced garlic just going in. And what we're doing now is just gonna brown the butter a little bit. You don't want the butter to burn, but giving it some time in a hot saucepan, it'll pick up more of those nutty flavors as the butter browns. So like I said, let me chop up some parsley because, you know, we should put something green in here, right? It can't all be beige and milky. And I know you can't see me chopping parsley, but just a rough chop is good. You don't want big pieces of this in your teeth when you're eating, but just some stuff to add a little more texture and flavor to the overall dish. If you don't want to use parsley and you have a different herb in your fridge, I would recommend using something like chives or even thyme would be really nice. And if you were doing thyme, I would stir that in the same time you're stirring in the parsley, which will be a little bit later. Just make sure you chop it up pretty fine because I know that thyme is a little bit thicker and can be a little more like leafy. But that would be a really delicious like winter flavor to have add to this dish. So butter and garlic just smells so good. There must be something about this just evolutionarily that makes us really want butter and garlic together, no matter where we're from. All right, I'm gonna let that brown for just another moment. For Thanksgiving, actually, instead of using spot prawns, I had used Dungeness crab. My brother and I picked the crab out of the shells, and that was just a really great chore to share with someone over the holidays. And I don't get to cook with them that often because we don't live near each other. So it was pretty fun to cook with my brother and boss him around a little bit. I am the big sister, so I really liked using Dungeness crab in this because it shreds up really nicely and gets like all cupped into the shells. Super, super tasty. It was a total hit. No one really wanted to eat anything else on the table. So I don't even know why we bothered making anything else. You know, it was just kind of, everything was a waste of time other than the mac and cheese, which is pretty funny. Everything was good, but it just eclipsed everything. So while this butter is browning just a little bit more, I don't know if you can see the bottom of the pan's getting a little brown. This is what we're looking for. I'm just chopping up some spot prawns here, and we're gonna throw those in right now, just bite-sized. So I'm actually gonna turn the heat off and stir these in just so that they get coated and lightly cooked. Remember that these are going to be going into the oven, so they don't need to be fully cooked right now. I just want to get them covered in this delicious mess of garlic butter. So these, I will now, all the juices and fats in here, I'm going to transfer to that big pot of pasta that I showed you earlier, and we're going to move on to the next step. So just pouring these on top of my pasta to save myself on cleaning some dishes. All right, so now I've got same pot, but it's empty. So turning this back on to medium heat, we're gonna add the rest of this butter that is going in here. Like I said, it's a full stick of butter. Some of this is shaved off because I used it to grease some pans earlier. But let me get some of this good stuff off the sides here. So let's go ahead and get this melted. Next thing we're going to do is make a roux. So that's a mixture of butter and flour, or any sort of fat and flour. And it's going to be what's thickening the sauce and holding it together so that the fat from the butter and the milk and the cream is suspended in this really nice cheesy goodness that you'll see in a few minutes. Without a roux, it makes it really easy for the fats to separate from the rest of the sauce. And then you're left with like an oily slick of fat on like a chowder or in like a mac and cheese, anything like that. That's not really what we're looking for. We're looking for fat, but we don't want an oily slick. We want it to be a really nice, thick, creamy mixture. So get this to melt a little bit more, but in the meantime, I'm stirring in about half a cup of flour. So this is going to cook actually for about a minute. And what the cooking is doing is breaking down some of the starches in here so that whatever liquid we pour in here gets really nicely absorbed and doesn't clump up. If you've ever made a roux before, chances are it's because you've made this for a chowder or something like a bechamel sauce, like a cream sauce for any dishes. I feel like the things that I cook, also gravy, the things that I cook, I tend not to use this cooking technique for whatever reason. But it is a classic thing to know how to do and very, very simple. All right, so now that that is put together, I'm going to add some milk. So this is just going to go in really gently. And I'll try to break up some of this stuff as this is cooking, just for another minute or two so that it gets nice and thick. And then the fun part starts where we add the cheese and actually turn this into something that resembles a sauce, because right now it's just milky liquid in a pot. So any questions about anything while I'm waiting for this to come together?
No questions so far. If you'd
Yeah.
like, maybe you could talk about like spot prawn roe and what you could do with that if it came in your package?
Yeah, so actually the spot prawns that we've been getting lately, when we first were getting spot prawns and had them as an offering, oftentimes they would come with roe attached to the bellies. And the roe kind of looks like an orange, yellow, bejeweled, like crust, like right where their little swimmer fins are. And now the spot prawns that we've been getting, because they're harvested in a different season, you won't really see that often. But if you do see it on the shells, like I said, it'll usually come, I mean, this is just the shell that I took off one of the prawns earlier. It'll come right here. And all you need to do is scrape that off and discard it. You're more than welcome to leave it on the shell if you're making a stock out of it, but it sort of gets in the way of a really clear, beautiful stock. It makes things a little bit cloudy. So I like to just go ahead and scrape it off with a spoon, like a little mini espresso spoon or just something like that. And otherwise, if you want to leave it on, it's edible once you cook it. Just it's worth trying just to understand what you're looking at. All right, so while we're here, you can see this almost looks like mashed potatoes now. It's like a really thick, delicious mixture. So going into this, what I'm going to do is add some heavy cream. So we're just adding more fat to this and more creamy deliciousness that'll put you in a food coma. And then I'm going to add almost all of my cheese. I'm going to save a little bit just to sprinkle, save a little more, sprinkle on top of the dishes once I assemble them. And I went ahead and turned off my little induction burner here just so I can get this melted, because I think this dish is hot enough. Should come together really quickly once the cheese is grated. And like I said, oh yeah, go ahead.
All right, I was just saying, speaking of cream and fat, does it matter the fat level in the milk? Like what kind?
I would say if you're making this recipe, stick with whole milk, because if you are going to reduce the fat content in it with the milk, it's really not going to reduce the fat content and everything overall. And I think, by the time you had butter and heavy cream, any sort of like saving of fat that you have with a 2% or skim milk is really going to be negligible. So, just go with the whole milk for this one. Actually, when I made it at Thanksgiving, my mom's a little lactose intolerant, so we used like a lactose-free milk, and that's totally fine. And makes it go down a little bit easier. But otherwise, stick with the full fat stuff. This is an indulgent dish to make. All right, what else am I adding in here? We've got Gruyere or some version of it, some heavy cream. And then I'm going to add some lemon zest. By no means is this a necessary thing, but I think it adds a really nice layer of brightness and flavor to help cut through some of the richness that we've layered into this pot. If you don't have a lemon, don't worry about it. But I really think that this adds just like a really nice fragrance to everything as well. So just about a lemon's worth. Already smells healthier. So we're gonna just stir that in here. And this is the fun part where I add these spot prawns. And actually, you know what? Since this pot is bigger, let me just do a little switcheroo. Spot prawns and shells. All of this is going to go in here now. See if I can do this without bumping my camera. Oops. Here, I'm going to do this on a non-slippery surface, so just bear with me first. Move this over to my cutting board here. This definitely is a dish that is a little bit easier to do when you have someone with you, so you can have someone hold your heavy pot and do some scraping. So you do not want to lose any of this cheese sauce in here. But definitely whatever is left on the spoon is yours for the taking. So everything else should go into the pot though. All right, that looks pretty good. I probably could have gotten more cheese sauce out of here, but so then this is just gonna get folded into the pasta and the prawns. Throw in our vegetables here. If you wanted, actually, I think frozen, defrosted black broccoli florets would be really nice to stir into this. Like, I love a broccoli and cheese. Not that it's going to make it healthier, it'll just add a different nuance to this that I think can be really delicious. So let me just make sure we get all these shells covered, every little nook and cranny. And then this is delicious on its own, though the spot prawns aren't fully cooked. So let me go ahead and move my burner here since we don't need this anymore. And then we're going to put this into a baking dish. The recipe calls for an 11, I believe it's an 11 by 13 baking dish, but if you don't have that size, don't worry about it. Just find some sort of like glass baking dish. This one's a ceramic one. If you don't have one that's big enough, you can always split it up between 2 different dishes. Whatever you have is going to be perfect. So I think I'm going to have to actually split this up between 2 dishes, which is fine because I promised one of my neighbors that I would bring them a little bit of this when I was done. So this is one dish. What I'm going to do to this is add just a layer of breadcrumbs right on top, and then a little extra coating of cheese. It doesn't have to be in that order. I think actually the other way around would have been nice. So that is going to go in the oven in just a moment, but let me assemble this one too, since I have so much mac and cheese left over. All right, this looks perfect. All right, just go ahead and like spread out whatever, if you're using the elbow macaroni or shells, give it a nice even layer here so that it cooks evenly or browns evenly in the oven. There's still a lot of cheese sauce left in here. If you're a perfectionist like me, you will really have a hard time leaving any cheese behind. So feel free to take your time on this and use a spatula and get the rest of it out. But for the sake of time, again, let's do some breadcrumbs and take the rest of the cheese, put this right on top. The only thing that this is missing, I think, would be some salt and pepper. I did salt the water when I was cooking the pasta, so the pasta should be seasoned. The cheese is pretty salty, so I just went ahead and gave that a taste to see if that was about what I wanted, but black pepper might be nice in here too. Just go ahead and taste it along the way, before you have the spot prawns in there, to see if the sauce is to your liking. And then let's go ahead and get this into the oven. So what I'll do is leave that in the oven for maybe 5 minutes or so. And, after that, I think that we'll have a really nice toasty looking dish. If it needs a little bit more time than that, it's only for browning's sake. So what I can do, we'll take a peek at it in a little bit and just turn on the broiler and have that finish off the top of the dish. And that's really all we're going for here, just to finish cooking through the spot prawns and then just adding a little bit of color to the dish. So, well, I have lots of like grated cheese on my countertop here. It's hard to not eat everything that's in front of me right now. But any questions right now while we're waiting for this bubbly dish to cook up?
What is the oven temperature you have set there?
So right now I have it set at 450 degrees. And like I said, it's more right now about finishing cooking the spot prawns, which isn't going to take very long at all. We already partially cooked them. They're already chopped up into little pieces. So even just a few minutes in the oven is going to go a long way to get that done. And then, yeah, excuse me while I eat some cheese sauce. Then otherwise, hopefully at 450 degrees, we'll get a little bit of browning on top with the cheese melting on it and the breadcrumbs. But like I said, we can always stick it under the broiler for a few minutes. I'll say that I wanted to say this earlier, but if you want to make this recipe maybe a little bit healthier for you, maybe healthier is not exactly the right word, but you could make this recipe gluten-free. There's certainly a lot of different gluten-free pastas to pick from nowadays that are pretty good, you know, whether it's a chickpea flour or brown rice flour that's used to make the pasta, and then making the roux. Of course, you can use a gluten-free flour blend, or even like sweet rice flour, gets like a nice viscous quality to it. You know, I'm sure that if you are already eating gluten-free, you know some of these tricks and hacks to use for replacing things. But, you know, this is a very easy recipe where these elements can be replaced and the dish is still going to be super delicious and crave-worthy at the end of it. In terms of making it dairy-free, there's not really a way to make this dairy-free. It would be a completely different recipe. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with the dairy-free mac and cheese, but it's not this recipe. There's no way to replace anything without jumping through some hoops and probably adding some other stuff to it. So trying to think if there's any other adjustments I would suggest. I imagine that most of you here can eat shellfish because you're here and this is called spot prawn mac and cheese. But in case you don't eat shellfish, what I think would be a really good substitution, or even if you do eat shellfish, a good substitution for either spot prawns or Dungeness crab, like I said, which is what I made the first time I made this over Thanksgiving, I would use hot smoked sockeye salmon. Hot smoked sockeye has, if you've never had it before, it's smoked salmon, but it has a really nice cooked, dense texture. It's flaky, almost more of a jerky. It's not that hard and chewy, but it's almost more like a jerky, and it has a bacon-like flavor. So that flaked into the cheese sauce would make this taste almost like a bacon mac and cheese, but with smoked salmon. So that's a really good option if you know you want this to be without any shellfish for yourself or for whoever you're feeding. And I think pollock would be really nice as well. Pollock is just kind of a generic white fish that you could mix in if you just wanted to add some more protein in here. But hot smoked sockeye would be the fish version of this that I would make if I, you know, make this again. I would give that a try. So,
Got a question for you. If you wanted to add some heat to the recipe, do you have like a spice you would recommend?
You know, what I would do, what you could do is instead of using a Gruyere, or I would use half Gruyere and half something like a pepper jack cheese, because that'll be melty but have a really nice dimension of flavor between the nuttiness of the Gruyere and the spice of the pepper jack. That's a nice way to just instantly add some heat to it. Otherwise, I think that even something like a Frank's Red Hot, a hot sauce like that would be good to just like add in to the cheese sauce once that comes together and taste it to your liking, or you can always add it at the end. But I think that would be really nice, almost like a buffalo mac and cheese. So I never thought about doing that, but that sounds really good now that you're mentioning it. So let me go ahead and check on the mac and cheese to see how it's looking. Let me just slide this over here in front of my camera just in case these are ready. Wow, these are looking pretty good, but what I'm gonna do is turn on the broiler just for a minute because they look melty on top, but they're not quite brown. So this isn't actually written into the recipe, but if you're making this recipe at some point, just remember at the end, you can always turn on the broiler for a minute, and don't leave it for too long. Don't turn your back for too long because it will burn really, really quickly. So let me just take a peek to see if my broiler is lit. All right, we'll give it another 30 seconds or so. I would say that this recipe keeps, or this dish keeps really well in the fridge. Like I said, this is why you would want to make it if you weren't planning on going anywhere, but just wanted to stay home and eat mac and cheese for like the next 6 meals of your life, which sounds great to me. So, just keep it in a covered container. You can keep it in the dish that it's in and just cover it with some foil, and it should stay good for the next 3 days or so. Use your judgment on that. I know that's the recommendation for anything with a cooked protein is about 3 days. So it probably won't last that long, especially if you're sharing it with someone else. Like I said, it just was the only thing anyone wanted to eat at the table when I made it. So, all right, let me check on my food now. All right, let me go ahead and take out this one. It's looking so delicious. I probably could have let this brown a little bit more, but let me switch my cameras here really quickly so you can see this beautiful dish of pasta. I probably could have let this brown a little bit more. I have some browning here, but I am just really impatient and would love to dig into this and serve myself a little plate. So go ahead and grab maybe a spatula. I don't know, any implement would work for this, I think. But we've got really nice ooey gooey baked mac and cheese and these little pieces of spot prawns that are just hiding in the shells. So it's a fun little bite when you get there. You'll have a little piece of mac and cheese and spot prawn tucked into it. Let me go ahead and take a bite of this. Oops, hold on, let me switch my cameras here. All right, so delicious baked spot prawn mac and cheese. And I definitely have a big spot prawn chunk right here. And this is going to be really hot, so let me just blow on this for one moment. This is really good. I'm going to try that hot sauce idea because I think that sounds delicious. I do love Frank's Red Hot. This is not an advertisement. This is just me and my personal preference. But I think a dash of this will be really good on top of this. I also actually really like the vinegar, the aspect that vinegar, like the vinegar in a hot sauce is going to bring to this because it'll help kind of balance out some of that richness. Yum. So that was spot prawn mac and cheese. Does anyone have any final questions before we finish up here? This is so tasty. All right.
I don't think so. Just jealous.
Just jealous. All right. Jealous is a good thing. So I wish I could share this with all of you. I've got 2 whole dishes of baked mac and cheese just waiting for someone to spoon it up here. Like I said, half of this is going to one of my lucky neighbors who just happens to be home right now and let me borrow some flour earlier. And the other half is going to be dinner and probably breakfast too, if I'm being honest. So I loved sharing a little bit of holiday spirit through food, especially through a dish like this. Spot prawns are a current member special that we're offering exclusive to members. So if you're interested in making this dish or anything with something shrimpy, spot prawns are incredible. They're going to be available, I believe, through Christmas. And yeah, if you don't have a pack in your freezer yet, make sure you add them to your next box before the holiday season is over so that you can make this recipe in December or January, if that's when you get your box, or February, even when you get your next box, whenever that is, you will not be disappointed. So if you're not a member yet, we have a special offer for you as well. Become a member today and you can use the code LIVE25, that's LIVE 25, to get $25 off your first box of seafood from Wild Alaskan Company. You can get access to exclusive member specials like the spot prawns that we were cooking with today, or get a special deal on gift boxes if you're sending that out to anyone this season. There should be a link dropped into the chat right now for the homepage and the code. Yeah, I think that about wraps it up. Just flip through my notes really quickly. Yep. Well, that's it. So join us next week. we're going to be making a really easy, quick salmon appetizer that's perfect for, again, the holidays. While we're in December, that's all we're going to talk about. If you've been to a salmon appetizer event before, you'll already know these recipes. We're going to be resharing them again next week because they're still relevant. So I'll be actually taking the next few weeks off, so I won't see you here on camera until after the new year. But one of my colleagues is going to be taking over host duties, so that should be a lot of fun. And I'm really excited to actually be a guest in the audience instead of here cooking and doing all the work. So either way, I hope to see you there. And thanks for watching. Live wild, everyone.